Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online Let's Play video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are going to be talking about the Nature's Guardian character build and of course, what it has to bring with it. So, of course, let me quit saying of course. So before we get started, let me go ahead and clarify a few things. One, this is a roleplay casual play build. It is not a meta build. It is meant for fun group play and just fun play overall. So, now that that's done, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Nature's Guardian and where it derived from. So, if you guys don't know, I play a character on live called the Druid build, and I played it for a long time, and eventually I got to the point where I had it set up in such a way that it just works really good for me, and then I brought it over to the PTS and started messing with it, making some adjustments to it, making it more player friendly, more group friendly, and I've come up with this. So this is the latest edition of the Druid build, and I did change the name to Nature's Guardian because I felt like it really fit the conceptual idea. And I'm not to take away from Dungeons and Dragons, but to bring more of a Elder Scrolls feel to the class or to the build type. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is the Nature's Guardian. This is a Wood Elf Warden. Now, I will be honest, Dark Elf, Khajiit also work really good with this, but all races can play this build. Alright, so as you can see, with being a Wood Elf, we have 40 points into Magicka, 24 into Stamina, and we do have 25k Magicka, 23k Health, 27k Stamina with an 1144 Mag Recovery, 1032 Stam Recovery, and then we have a 2155 Weapon Damage, 1946 Spell Damage, 38% Spell Crit, 34% Weapon Crit, 13,000 Spell Resist with 13,000 Physical Resist. We are using 2 Munda Stones because we have Twiceborn Star on. And we are using the Thief Munda Stone with the Lover Munda Stone. Both of these add to this build's playability, not only in solo play, but also in group play. And then we use Tri-Stat Food. Moving on to the equipment and inventory stuff that we carry. So we do use tripods for when we're playing. In some situations we'll use tripods, mainly to give us all 3 resources back. In some situations, we'll even use spell power pots and the stamina power pots. And these are just so we have ways to sustain our resources in different situations. And then also to give us like major sorcery, major brutality, even though we don't really need it. Alright, moving on, we do use the long fin pasty with melon sauce as our food because we do want to get a maximized amount of magicka and stamina along with max health. Now, a lot of people will say the stats are too low for this to be an effective build. I play a build very similar to this on live, and I can tell you I can do veteran content with it, no problem, and it works fine. So people's idea of what you need to have and what you have to have are 2 totally different things. From my playing of this character in the live servers, I do have a 31k max stamina with a 22k max magicka, but that's because I run a different setup of gear and stuff. I am going to be changing over to this on the live server because after playing around on this on the PTS for roughly about 9 hours straight, I fell in love with this, and there's something about it it was just so much fun. So moving on to the sets now, starting with the monster set. With this one I'm using Sentinels because I do want to be, like I said, this build is more of a group support build. It's always designed, its design was always to be very supportive, not just through healing but also through resource management, through buffs, debuffs, and things like that it can bring to the group. And I really like Sentinels for the fact that it's the 2-piece benefit. The 1-piece benefit, the 4% healing done, is good, but the 2-piece benefit where you have a 10% chance to heal your allies for 8 seconds and also restore stamina every second for the 8 second within a 5-meter radius and it can go off every 15 seconds. This thing's pretty much non-stop going off, and it's really good, and I really like this with this build. Again, Twice Born Star, like I mentioned, the reason for this set is it gives you max health, it gives you stamina, it gives you magicka, and then the 5-piece allows you to use 2 Mundus Stones. Now remember, this is also, I need to tell you, it's a light armor build. This isn't a medium armor build anymore. The reason I switched to light armor was after testing and playing the Divine Monk on both PTS and on the live service, I started testing this with a light armor build instead of a medium armor build, and I found it to work better. Now, the reason I say it works better is because you get spell penetration and you get physical penetration. So you get both of those with the Mundus Stone, the lever, but also in the light armor you get extra spell penetration, and then also being a Warden you can get extra physical pen. So you can actually play off of that really well with this build, and it takes advantage of it. So I really like that. Moving on to the other set that we're running, Powerful Assault. Everyone should have guessed that one. That was a given for this build. In order for this build to work properly, you need a set like Powerful Assault. Now, Powerful Assault is the better option for this build. I've tried a lot of different combinations of sets, and this one I find to be best. The reason why is the 2, 3, 4-piece bonus is good, because it gives you more health, it gives you stamina, and it gives you that weapon damage. But it's that 5-piece bonus again. When you cast an assault ability, you increase the weapon and spell damage. You increase your weapon and spell damage of up to 3 allies within 10 meters for 164 for 15 seconds. So it's not minor courage or major courage. It's its own thing. And I really like how that setup works, because it plays in PvE, it plays in PvP, it plays in dungeons, and it works in trials. So it works in all the different environments. Alright, now let's go over traits and enchants, and I'm going to do this differently than I've done in the past. So the enchants I'm using are the tri-stats on the head, chest, and legs, and this is so you can hybridize a little bit better into the 3 stats, but it also gives you that not only hybridization, but it gives you all 3 resources, and using those on the bigger pieces allows you to, even if you're playing like a stamina character, to be able to build for some magicka, for like magicka skills, so you can use those skills like shields, or you can use like your class buffs, or different things that can play into your character. But with this one, this is truly hybridized. So the shoulders and the belt are both max magicka enchants, and then the gloves are max stamina. Now, somebody asked me why I did this, because that's only like 700 stamina and 700 magicka. Well, when you add that 700 stamina and magicka to the like 1500 you get from the tri-stats almost, that actually takes you up to an extra like 2000. So it's really good, and then you're gonna get more from the tri-stat jewelry you're using as well. So we're going to use those as the enchants. Now on the traits, we're going to use 4 divines on the smaller pieces, so the belt, the boots, the gloves, and the shoulders. And we're going to use the divines to boost our Mundus Stone use. We're going to use invigorating on the helm and legs. Now you don't have to use invigorating. The only reason why I do is because I like to be capable of sustaining. You can use divines here if you want. That's up to you, but I like to use the invigorating for the sustainability. And then of course on the chest piece, since it is a heavy armor piece, I go reinforced to give me higher resistance values. I don't build like most people. I build my characters to be well-rounded, so that they bring a little bit of everything to their build, so that way they can play more accessible into a lot more roles than just one. The particular setup of this build is damage dealing with support. So it can do damage and support the group at the same time. It's pretty cool. Works really good in small, in like 4-man group play. Alright, moving on to the jewelry traits and enchants. On the 2 rings, we are using tri-runes. Most people would have guessed that. The reason for the tri-runes is the fact that it gives you the magicka, stamina, and health, And it's actually only 1 point difference from the tri-stats up here. So you're getting the same amount. So you're still getting that. And when I said you're getting about 1,500 points, you're actually getting almost 2k points in attributes. And then you're getting another 700 magicka and stamina on top of that. So you're getting about 2,700 magicka and stamina all together. And it works out really good with the overall. So, and then the necklace, or the enchants we're using on the rings, we're using a weapon damage enchant and a spell damage enchant. Now, somebody's going to ask me this, and I want to rectify what they're going to say before they say it. And so it's clear, the reason for the weapon and spell damage enchants is so this way you can build it into both magicka and stamina. You're not super powerful at dealing magic damage or stamina damage, but because the correlation of both, you get to about fully buffed, about almost 4k weapon damage, fully buffed, and almost 3.5k spell damage, fully buffed. And that's with, like, major courage, minor courage, the buff that you get from the powerful assault, and then on top of that, the percentage enchants increases from major brutality, major sorcery, minor brutality. All that stuff adds up, and it makes you super powerful. Alright, the last piece here, we are using a necklace infused with a magic recovery because we want to have a good mag recovery for this build so we can sustain not only our stamina but our magicka as well. And then moving on to the weapons. So the main hand weapon we are using is a Nirnhoned sword with a frost enchant. Now you can use any combination here, so you can use sharpened Nirnhoned, Nirnhoned precise, Nirnhoned sharpened, and then infused Nirnhoned on the front bar if you wanted to. I go Nirnhoned sharpened with this build because the Nirnhoned main hand allows me to build and maximize my weapon and spell damage on the front bar. And then on top of that, that frost damage gives me another way of CCing or crowd controlling while I'm in combat. Now, it doesn't happen too often, but it happens enough. And then the offhand, we're using absorb stamina and sharpen. The sharpen to give us higher spell and physical penetration. Again, we build to be high penetration because our crit is so low. And if we don't crit, we still want to get that high penetration value, so we get that higher damage output. Alright, moving on to the bow. We are using an infused bow with a weapon damage enchant. Now this does boost both weapon and spell damage, and because of the way this build is set up, like I said, you can get to almost 4k spell damage, or just over 4k weapon damage, and about 3,500 spell damage, because of this enchant and then all the other buffs you have, depending on your group makeup. Alright, now that I've done that, we're going to go over skills. And I'm just going to go over the skills on the bar first, and then I'm going to go through the class skills, weapon skills, armor skills, world, guild, and alliance, racial, and crafting stuff that I would suggest taking. And I did this in the last video. People seem to like this more because I show all the skills, and I kind of go over all the skills, but I mainly go over the ones that are on the bar. This is how I play the build primarily, unless I'm playing, depending on what kind of content I'm playing, depending on what kind of group makeup I'm playing, I show you that I have other skills and abilities unlocked to use. Alright, starting with the first ability we have on the bar here, we have Rending Slashes. Now this is a great ability. It does damage up front, damage over time. It's a great single target. And it also reduces movement speed of enemies by 30% for 4 seconds. Then we have Bloodthirst. This is our primary spammable. This does 5 consecutive hits, dealing damage, and the final hit deals 300% damage, along with healing you for 69% of that damage caused. So this can actually heal you for quite a bit. Next ability we have Subterranean Assault. This is where we're going to get our major fracture from. Not all the time. Most of the time. So this does poison damage. After 3 seconds, these shulks burst out of the ground, doing poison damage to all enemies and applying major fracture to them for 6 seconds. Next ability we have is Gripping Shards. Now this one, a lot of people are going to say, why aren't you using the Magicka version that is based off of Max Magicka instead of the one off of Max Health? The reason for that is because if I do the one for Max Magicka, the damage difference is very minute. It's very small. So I like to use the Max Health one because this one also CC locks the enemies. It locks them in place for 3 seconds, and it's any enemy. And I don't know if there's a cap on it because I've tested it in areas where I can test it like on like 20 mobs, and all 20 mobs will get CC'd. So this is a really good skill for CCing a lot of mobs and keeping them locked in place and keeping them slowed, that kind of thing. So that's why I like to use it, not just the damage it does over time. Next up, I have Echoing Vigor, and this is to proc our Powerful Assault, and you are going to want to keep this up all the time. So you're going to want to basically be casting this every rotation. But this does a really good heal over 10 seconds. Next up, we have our Enchanted Forest, and again, please understand, this is an optional setup. The rest of the skills I'm going to show you that this character has access to are other skills you can choose to use instead of this. And this whole build is susceptible to your choices. So it's not just what I do. But Enchanted Growth is really good. It does a really good burst heal up front. It does healing over 6 seconds for every second, and then it generates 20 ultimate if you heal any friendly targets under 50% health. This is my oh crap button. It's also super cheap on ultimate cost. Moving on to the back bar, next ability we have is Growing Swarm. This is a really great damage over time ability because it lasts for 10 seconds, but then it spreads to more targets. So trash fights, really good. Damage over time ability. Certain boss encounters where they summon ads, it's a really good damage ability because when the ability ends, it'll spread. Or if the enemy dies, it'll spread. So next we have Venom Arrow. This is a really great crowd control ability, but it's also a great damage over time ability. This does damage up front, damage over 10 seconds, and then of course, if the enemy happens to be casting an ability of any kind, whether Magicka or Stamina, and you hit him with this, it'll interrupt him, set him off balance, and stun him for 3 seconds. Next, we have Arrow Barrage, and you can use either Arrow Barrage or Endless Hail, your choice. I like Arrow Barrage because it has a 7-meter radius versus the 5-meter radius of Endless Hail. Both of them work the same. They both do damage every second for so many seconds. Next, we have Bull Netch. I use this because not only does it give me stamina back over 27 seconds, it also gives me major sorcery and major brutality, increasing both spell and weapon damage by 20%. Then we have Expansive Frost Cloak. This is more of, again, one of those group support skills that's really good on the Warden, because not only will I be buffing everyone's health by 10%, I will also be giving them Major Warden, Major Resolve, increasing spell and physical resist by 5,280 for 24 seconds, and it has a 28-meter range. So it works great in trials, it works great in dungeons, and it also works great in overland when you're doing like world bosses, dragon farming, whatever. And then the last ability we have, and this is more of the group support ability, is Aggressive Warhorn. Now this does increase you and your allies' max magic and the stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. It does have a 20-meter range around you, and it again lasts for 30 seconds. And then on top of that, it also gives you and your allies major force and increasing critical damage by 15% for 10 seconds. So it's a really great support skill. Alright, now going over the skills that I have unlocked, and like I said, all of these are optional. You do not have to unlock the same ones as me. These are the ones I prefer to use. So Wild Guardian, really great companion pet that you can summon and use when you're solo playing, or you just want that extra companion damage. Really great for that. Next we have Cutting Dive, another great damage ability. It's more single target and it's ranged. I use this a lot when I'm playing like in Overland, and I'm fighting world bosses. I like this ability because it does do heavy damage, and I swap it out with Growing Swarm. Then we have Subterranean Assault, which I already explained. We have the Growing Swarm, which I already explained. And then we have Bull Netch, already explained. And then we also have Birds of Prey. This is a great one if you want to get minor berserk, and you can put this on both bars, which is nice if you want to get that extra 8% damage. So, Green Balance, Enchanting Forest, already went over this, or Enchanted Forest, already went over this, and then we have Soothing Spores. This is like, the rest of these ability, or if you're going to play more healer-orientated on this build, you can. And it can actually work really good as a healer. So, Soothing Spores is a great heal. It's a burst heal, but it's a close target burst heal. It's not a ranged burst heal. You're going to want to use this up close because it works better within 8 meters of your target. Next, we have Budding Seeds, another great heal. So this one will heal in an area for X amount after 6 seconds. But when you cast it, it'll do a heal over time. A lot of times what I like to do is I like to use this on the front bar. Oops. I like to use this on the front bar instead of like the shards. I will use Budding Seeds and do that and let it tick heal. And then pop it for a burst heal. So I'll let it go, and then when it gets close to ending, I'll pop it. So it's usually when it's down to about a second left. So it's a really good way to help sustain your group in dungeons or trials or whatever, because this build can play a stamina healer. Next, we have Living Trellis. I like Living Trellis. It heals up front of you for 10, you know, an ally in you for 10 seconds. It heals for so much every second for that 10 seconds, but it basically shoots a vine between you and your ally. And then on top of that, when the vine expires, you heal the target for an additional amount of health. So I really like this. It's kind of one of those things, like, it's a strategic heal, but you can use it in such a way that you can really aid different people. Then we have Green Lotus. Another great ability, if you want to get major savagery on your character, this is another one skill you can use. You can put this on your back bar, swap it out with something else, and use this. And this will do a heal every time you light attack or heavy attack for 20 seconds. So anytime you heal within that 20 seconds of casting this, it will, or anytime you do a light attack or heavy attack, it will heal for so much for each type of attack. And it lasts for 20 seconds. And then you get major savagery on top of that, which increases your weapon critical, which also applies to some of the heals you have, like Vigor, Soothing Spores, and Enchanted Forest are all affected by that higher crit chance. Then we have Nature's Embrace. This one also is affected by the Green Lotus, but this one's a really good heal. This heals over 10 seconds, and you gain 3 ultimate when each of these effects complete. So when you cast this, it will give you 3 ultimate, and it also scales off your highest stat. Winter's Embrace, we do take Northern Storm. This is a great group support ability. Not only does it do damage, it also crowd controls enemies, and it has a great chance of CCing them or locking them in place because they can become chilled. And then it gives your group minor or major protection that are within the 10-meter radius of this effect. So this is a great way to keep major protection applied to your group to reduce the incoming damage. And it just works out really well. On top of that, it also boosts your max magic by 8% while slotted. We have the Expansive Cross Cloak, really good group support ability, like I said. Then we have Gripping Shard's great CC ability. Polar Winds is a great self-heal, and it's really nice for, like, if you're tanking and you want to have another self-heal. This is a great ability for that, and it's very powerful. Then you have Crystallized Slab. This is a great ability if you are wanting to redirect damage back to your enemies and get magic back. I like it for that purpose. And then I also like Frozen Devices, and a lot of people are going to wonder why, because you can set multiple versions of this out. So if I'm playing in a group and I want to trap multiple targets, I'll do something like this. And then when the boss encounter starts, any enemies that spawn in those locations automatically get pulled to the group, because they're going to get pulled to wherever I am. So I really like that ability for that reason. Now, the other thing I'm going to mention is always unlock your class passives, because you never know what sets of skills you're going to be using or how you're going to be using them. Next up, when it comes to the dual wield, which is our main bar weapons, we do unlock the ultimate active abilities and passives here, and the skills you unlock here are pretty much player preference. You don't have to go off of what I'm using. You can unlock the ones you want. I do like Rend, Bloodthirsty, Rending Slashes, Steel Tornado, Quick Cloak, and Shrouded Daggers. With the bow, the same thing. I pick the skills that best reflect my ability to play the character the way I want to, which is more of a support character. So I use things like Ballista, Focused Aim to get that minor fracture, Draining Shot to give me a heal. So like if I'm solo playing, I will use this instead of Venom Arrow. And then Arrow Barrage is really nice for the damage over time. Bombard's a really great CC. And then we have also Venom Arrow. Moving on to armor. Remember, like I said, this is a light armor build, so you are going to want to take the active ability and all the passives here, because you will take advantage of all of that. When it comes to medium armor, you're going to want to take the top 2 and the bottom 1. On heavy armor, you're going to want to take all 3 of the top passives. And all this is just basically to add to your character's capability to be effective, because you are wearing 5 pieces of light, 1 medium, 1 heavy. So take advantage of those small additions you get for those other pieces. World skills. Soul Magic, you can take these as well. I do use these abilities, so I do use Shatter Soul sometimes. I do use Consuming Trap at some points. And then moving on to guild skills, Fighters Guild, I do unlock the passives and all the ultimate and active abilities. And the reason why I use a lot of these abilities is mainly for my own purposes. Like if I'm solo playing and I want to get more DPS out of my character, I'll use things like Silver Shards and Barb Trap and Evil Hunter even, so I can get that weapon crit, and I get it consistently. So I actually have like a 40-something% critical on my weapon side, and it really applies to my capability to use this character more efficiently. And then of course I get all that greater weapon damage and all that stuff. Mage's Guild is another one I like to use a lot of the abilities from, the ultimate, active abilities, and passives. And I use them for different reasons. Inner Light to boost my max magicka for when I'm using Northern Storm. Structured Entropy I'll use for a way to do damage over time and then heal myself if I want extra healing for just myself and I want a good damage ability. So it's kind of a mix there. Then I have a Volcanic Ruin for a CC, crowd control. I have Balance for if I want a tank and I don't want to use my class buff for resistances, my Frost Cloak. I can actually use this. It also gives me a way of getting magicka back, which is going to make me a little bit more effective in some situations for tanking. And then on to Sigil Order, I do unlock the passives and all the active abilities and ultimate again. And I take the ones, a lot of the times I take skills that reflect my ability to play my character in different roles and different situations depending on how I want to play the content. Whether it's dungeons, trials, PvP, open world, like overland content, questing, world bosses, delves, public dungeons. I change my builds a lot. And this gives me the tools necessary to do that because I have access to all these different skills. Undaunted, all the active abilities and passives, of course. And the active abilities, again, here are optional in which ones you want to take. And they're situational on when you're going to use them. So I like using a lot of different of these abilities because they're synergies. And synergies do play well into groups, whether you're in a dungeon or a trial. So depending on the situation, I will use those abilities. Alliance War, assault skills. I always keep an assault skill on my character. So if I'm not using Vigor, I will be using Caltrops. And I usually swap Caltrops out for Subterranean Assault because this does an AoE, 8-meter radius of Major Fracture, and it stays applied for the duration of the 10 seconds. Actually, it lasts for 14 if you do the calculations right. The thing lasts, or not 14, 12 seconds, because at 1 second it's going to apply, at 4 seconds or 5 seconds it's going to reapply, and then at 11, like 10 or 11, it's going to reapply again, to where you get this consistent, or sorry, at 8 to 10 seconds it's going to reapply, and that's so you get this consistent application of major fracture on your enemies, and it stays more consistently. And it's just for the major fracture. The damage over time is pretty nice as well. Support, I take Reviving Barrier. This is another great support skill. Efficient Purge, if I'm running through like a trial or a dungeon or something where I know I gotta purge a lot, I will use that. And then Stalwart Guard is a really good one, not just if I'm tanking, but also if I'm playing like support, because I can use my self-healing and things like that to keep myself alive while somebody else is taking the brunt of the damage kind of thing. I'll absorb 30% of it, and then on top of that, they get minor force the whole time we're bonded. And then a Magicka aid is really good. Moving on to racials, I am a Wood Elf, and I will take advantage of every passive here, especially things like the Hunter's Eye, increased movement speed 10%, and physical and spell resistance when you dodge roll. I'll take advantage of that. I'll take advantage of Ifri's Endurance and the 2,000 increased stamina and the poison immunity. So lots of different things here that play well into this. And then of course moving on to the crafting abilities or passives. Medicinal use, very good at the end game. You don't necessarily need it for like dungeons all the time. Like if you're doing, even if you're doing veteran dungeons, like starting doing veteran dungeons, you don't really need this. If it's base game dungeons, I will say in DLC dungeons, you'll definitely want to have this. And then same thing with provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur. If you're playing DLC veteran dungeons, you will want to have these. But if you're doing just regular base game dungeons, you don't really need it. And trials, definitely, these come in handy. Alright, now that I've gone over all that, we're going to go over CP real quick, starting with the red tree. So we have 56 in the Ironclad. This reduces your damage taken by direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 10 into Spell Shield. This increases your spell resistance by 1,003. We have 28 in the Light Armor Focus. This increases your physical resistance by 2542. Then we have 31 in Thick Skin. This reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. We have 43 in the Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical, poison, disease damage by 10%, and then 43 into Elemental Defender, which reduces your damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 40 in the Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of damage shields by 16%, and then 19 in the Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 15%, or 5%. Now, before I go any further, I am going to explain this to people so they understand. The Quick Recovery and Bastion are optional. If you don't feel like you need them, don't take them. The only reason why I keep these like this setup is because this is more of a universal setup. So you don't have to change your CP a lot to play the content. It might be a little bit more challenging in some dungeons and some trials having less damage reduction, but you can also swap in a shield to compensate if you need to. Moving on to the green tree, we have 40 in the Warlord, and this reduces your damage, or your cost to break free, by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%, and then 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. Moving on to the middle green tree, we have 75 in the Mooncalf, increasing Stam recovery by 14%. 43 in the Arcanus, increasing Mag recovery by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 in the Tumbling, reducing your dodge roll chance, your dodge roll cost by 16%, and then 40 in the Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Again, these ones here, I don't even want to say are optional. These are, I would pretty much say these are necessary, especially if you're doing a lot of dungeons and trials, because you do block a lot and you do dodge roll a lot. So saving resources there is really important. Moving on to the blue tree, we are hybridized in the blue tree because we want to be able to take advantage of Magicka and Stamina together, and this build works really good with both. So, 43 in the Bless, this increases healing done by 10%, and then since we are using Stamina and Magicka heals, depending on the situation, this increases your critical damage and critical healing done by 10% with 23 points. And then we have 43 in Elemental Expert, increasing Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Wardens get 10% or 6% Magic damage and 6% Frost damage. So that's why we build into this as well. Moving on, we have 35 in the Physical Weapon Expert. This increases the damage of your light and heavy attacks done with dual wield and bow by 20%. Then we have 40 in the mastered arms. This increases your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. And we do get these awesome buffs up here. Moving on, we have 43 in the mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage by 10%. 23 in a precise strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then 20 in the thaumaturge. This increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. Before I leave this section, I do want to mention this because somebody brought this up. They were like, 9% isn't that much of a damage increase to damage over time. When you incorporate all the different benefits that this build gets, where you're using both magic and stamina, you're going to want to include or increase any damage possible. And that includes your damage over time, even if it's only 9%. And that is our CP setup for this build. Now, moving on to some playing of this build, we are going to go ahead and jump over to a dungeon. Now, I am going to use one of the other dungeons from Rothgar, or not Rothgar, from Frost. We're just going to go to the depths of Malatar. From Wraithstone, that's what I meant to say. So I'm going to use this dungeon. Testing in the other dungeons is fine and all, but in here I can get through this one a little bit easier. I know it really well, and I just want to show you guys the effectiveness of this build. Now, remember, this is how I play the build normally. I don't play this build with other skills and stuff. I use it this way even on the live service because I do have this build on live. The difference between my build and this build is on the live server I use Sentinels. I don't use Sentinels, I actually use Selines for higher damage output. The only reason why in this one I use Sentinels, and I will be switching to Sentinels on live, is because I like the sustainability. Oh, really? And if you guys didn't notice, she got CC locked because of the ice from my frost weapon. So, and it turned her to ice like that. There's our little spider buddy. The Dwemer spider is really good as well, so. Alright, so we're going to go up and, of course, face this boss down. Which I know I'll probably get hurt pretty bad, but that's fine. I'm not concerned about, like, how bad I get hurt, because I can heal through most of it. And of course, before he disappears, I will be letting him kill me. So I don't have him quite where I want him. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let him kill me now, because this is where, if I got him any lower in his health, he would actually disappear. So, but that is the Nature's Guardian new and improved update version for the Scalebreaker, of course, DLC. And you guys can choose, like, again, remember, everything with a build is optional. You don't have to play it exactly as is. If you want to change something about the build, feel free to. Also, the skill choices, feel free to change. Gear sets, enchants, traits, you name it. You can set this how you want. This is just a suggestion and an idea. But that is it for the Nature's Guardian build, guys. I hope you guys liked it. I love playing this, actually, on both live, especially on live, because I do play quite a bit when I am on live now, because it's just so much fun. It's so much, it's so entertaining to play something that's not only can it bring damage and stuff, it can also bring some group support. It can be a healer, it can be a tank, it can be a damage dealer, it can be whatever you need it to be, and it works so well. So, and again, before anyone says anything about the stats and how low they are and stuff, this works fine in normal and veteran content, both dungeons and in trials. So, and of course, that's it for the video, so you guys know what's coming next. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.